First of all, I'm Sally Marr, and I have worked with Phonics in Motion for years. I taught in the Mayfield schools for 39 years before I retired, and still went back up until March, but now not back because of visitors in the school and things like that. So I went back and helped struggling readers in kindergarten for the last 3 years or 4 years. Twice a week for about 2 hours, and did a lot of benchmarking and things. So I used Phonics in Motion in my classroom when I was teaching, and I will say it's totally evolved over time in terms of what's available on the. I mean, there was no website when I was using it, and what's available on the website since March is like night and day from what was there prior to March. And so if you have any questions on anything as we're going through it, I'm going to show you kind of where the links are within the program and that are on the website to show you what's available for teachers that support what it is that we're doing in the classroom. So today we're going to focus on the KMPs, which stands for the kinesthetic motion for the phoneme. I have a presentation here, so. And we're going to focus on a little bit on the reading and writing monster, which is the handwriting stories. And you know, the newest research on handwriting is that it's a critical component in what teachers should be doing with kids. It helps develop brain pathways within their brain from right to left hemisphere and multiple opportunities. So it's 5 to 10 minutes a day of practicing some stroking with handwriting is an important piece. We're going to work on the language calendar, the modeled writing part of the program, and then I'll kind of integrate some of the website support that's available. Then on Thursday when I come back, I'm going to work on probably finishing up the language calendar because I don't know that we'll get through it all today, and the website support then for those other aspects of it. Why Phonics in Motion? First of all, it's fun. Kids love it. It gets them up and moving. It helps build culture in the classroom. It sets up routines. It allows you, provides a kinesthetic component to what you're doing with kids. It allows you to observe students and whether they're making connections because it's out there as compared to only what they're thinking. You're actually able to observe. It's observable. It's engaging. It supports any curriculums that you're using. But it does definitely help building the culture of being risk takers. Kids need to be risk takers in their learning. It's fun. It's bodily kinesthetic again, and it helps children store and retrieve information. It sets up brain pathways. Significance. Predictor of future reading is phonemic awareness, letter ID. Those are the two criticals. This is a phonemic awareness program that has a phonics component to it in terms of you're actually then working with the visual component of the letter or the sound, but you've got also the kinesthetic piece and the phonemic awareness piece. It's built on phonemic awareness, though. It's different than starting on day one and showing them the letter P and saying this is a P, and P says P. It starts with what do you hear, and attaching the letter to what you hear, as compared to the starting with the visual and then trying to attach the other part to it. In terms of kids entering first grade with underdeveloped phonemic awareness, remain underachieving readers in fourth grade if we do not bridge that gap. We have to provide the phonemic awareness and develop that layer of learning. The latest research on the science of reading are the two components are word recognition and language. And the quicker students can recognize a word, the better their comprehension will be. And the language part is vocabulary and background knowledge. And those are two critical pieces that we need to be also building simultaneously to what kids are getting in the class, you know. And the language calendar is a perfect support for developing language. And the poetry develops vocabulary. It develops fluency. Fluency is the bridge between word recognition and language and comprehension. And I was listening to a podcast the other night that Tim Rosinski was doing, who is, you know, is the guru on fluency. And he was talking about struggling readers in 3rd, 4th, 5th, and up. Struggle, yes, some of them with word recognition, but a large part of their problem is that they're not fluent readers. And it's not speed of reading, it's prosody of reading. It's being able to phrase. It's being able to put the words together so that they make sense within a phrase grouping. And the comprehension piece then is the goal of reading. That's our goal, is for kids to comprehend. If you have a kid who's stuck at word recognition and doesn't move into fluency and then up in, their comprehension isn't going to be there either. You need to make sure that all of these pieces and parts are fitting together. And when you look at phonics in motion, you hit all of those pieces and parts. You've got the word recognition where you're doing the KMPs and you're doing the phonic piece, and you got the vowel house where you're learning spellings. You've got the language piece because you're doing poetry and you're doing a language calendar entry every day. So you're building language that way. You've got the fluency piece because you're doing poetry, and poetry is the #1 way to develop fluency with kids. It is a fluent, it's a fluent model for them on a daily basis. And then the comprehension piece you're getting in your reading, in your, what's the meaning thing that you use, I'm sorry? Making meaning, read alouds, all of those, which are also talked about during the language calendar time. Thank you. Dr. Bruce McCandless, who's from Stanford, he's a real interesting, well, he's a researcher and an educator. He's in the education department at Stanford. The quality of your word recognition impacts your comprehension. You have kids, he gave the example of there's, let's say, I don't know if he said it was 1,500 5-letter words or 15,000 5-letter words in the English language. Well, whatever. A kid comes along and he's reading and he comes to a 5-letter word. He has 220 milliseconds to decode that word before it impacts his comprehension. That's how quick. And even the most fluent readers, you and I, are doing that as we're reading. When they've done functional MRIs on fluent readers, readers who are struggling, and young readers, all of them are doing the same thing. It's just the speed at which you're doing it. So that's a really important piece and part. So let's start with the components of the program. KMPs, the kinesthetic motion for the phoneme. It is built on how the sound is perceived and articulated in your body. The T sound, the t, 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 the motion, the KMP is t, t, t. It's exactly what your tongue is doing when you produce that sound. T, t, t. The M sound, in order to produce an M, the you have to have lots of tension in your body to produce it in terms of speech. There's lots of tension when you do the KMP. You want kids to feel it when they're doing it. The reading and writing monster is the component for handwriting. Again, the language calendar is a daily modeled writing activity, and it's done by the teacher, not by the kids. And then the vowel house is a graphic organizer for the spellings, the sounds and the spellings of the vowels. So Let's start with the KMPs. They're kinesthetic, there's a movement. It marks the phoneme. If you think about a child trying to hear the sound at the beginning of pumpkin, by the time I say the word pumpkin, that sound's gone. It's fleeting, it's gone. But when you do add a KMP to it, the p, all of a sudden they've got a visual to assist them in the learning of it. So it marks the phoneme. It's based on the way the body pronounces sounds. It's loaded with information, and again, it's based on articulation. It's not just an arbitrary gesture. It's not like when you see alphabet strips and they have a picture of a heart for the H, and then somebody says this is heart. Okay, this is their motion that they're using for heart. Some kids might look at that and say they're beat. You don't know that that's what they've attached in terms of the component is what you meant. Like you're pointing here to heart, but they're thinking, oh, it's beating. Well, that is going to be a mismatch in terms of their articulation. So, examples, we're going to go through these. By the end of today, you're going to know most of the motions because we're going to integrate them in poetry. So some of them, again, we talk about whether they're a long or a short duration, the tension that's needed to produce it. Some of them there are motions for the digraphs, for those phonemes, for the shun, the TION. There's ways for kids then to compare sounds that they're perceiving so that they're able to do it through the motion and you can see what they're doing. And the how, authentically, immersion. Do it in poetry. Do it when they're lining up. Do it when you're at a guided reading table and you're asking them to generate a vocabulary word. Do it when you're on the way to music, You're immersing them in their sound system. And a lot of kids today, sound systems are not very developed because they're so visual. From the time they're little, they're on a screen. They're not paying attention to what they're hearing, they're paying attention to what they're seeing. So we need to make sure that sound system is really authentic and very well developed. We have a scope and sequence in Phonics in Motion that we came up with that is pretty similar to, we've gone back and looked at Foundations and Haggerty and some other phonics programs. It's pretty consistent, but all of them, when they're developing it, they're developing it the way they perceive it. One difference is we do short O before we do short A, because in terms of phonemics, it's easier to perceive. The ah is much easier to perceive than ah, because ah can change based on the sounds and letters that are around it. An ah with an N after it is different than an ah with a T. That nasal sound changes it. So we do short O first. It's the one we choose to start first. But if you're using Haggerty or you're using another program, you can look at the scope and sequence and compare where they are and add the motion to it. If that's the letter that the teachers are being asked to work with that week in Haggerty, just add the KMP to it so that it's there. And then again, these are just other ideas of ways to immerse it. Days of the week song, which we'll do with the calendar. Song fun, brain breaks, if you get them up and moving. Mask breaks now. So anyway, now I'm going to do some with you. We're going to get up moving. We're going to start with, you need to stand up. Let's start with a couple of the poems that are on the website now for October. So when we start with the poetry, the first time we do it, we don't give them the visual. Don't show them the words the first time, because you don't want them reading it. You want them immersed in listening for sounds. And you want to start with a single sound the first time through, and then maybe add another one that's one that they did before. And you're going to keep layering in more sounds for the kids. So we're going to start with It's October. Ready? And this is going to be hard because I have a mask on, so it's October. The motion for ah, I'm just going to take my mask off briefly, is ah. You go to the doctor, you open your mouth, he says ah, ah, ah. You're not sticking your finger all the way down your throat. It's just ah, ah. Okay? Sorry. It's October. It's October. Halloween, Halloween. Pumpkins, bats, and spiders. Jack-o'-lanterns, witches. Trick or treat. Trick or treat. Okay? Let's do it. It's October. It's October. Halloween, Halloween. Pumpkins, bats, and spiders. Jack-o'-lanterns, witches. Trick or treat. Trick or treat. Okay, I'm going to add something else in. Okay? Let's see which one I want to add first. Okay. It's October. It's October. Halloween. Halloween. The H is, there's lots of tension, and you're not doing this. You're really tense. You feel the tension in your arm, and you say to the kids, oh my God, I feel that. It's like there's a elephant on your hand. Halloween, Halloween, pumpkins, bats, and spiders, jack-o'-lanterns, witches, trick or treat, trick or treat. Okay, we're going to add another one. It's October, it's October, Halloween, Halloween, pumpkins, bats, and spiders, jack-o'-lanterns, witches, trick or treat, trick or treat. Okay, what sounds have we done so far? The H, okay. The P. And the P is the only one, I will tell you, that doesn't exactly fit your pronunciation. Because when you do a P, you really do, your lips explode out. But for kids, this motion is easier than doing this. It's more natural. And we always say it's like Pac-Man. It's like he's eating all those dots on the Pac-Man board. So, okay, what else? We did the T. Now you could, with first grade or second grade, do a blend. Trick. This is the TR. Trick, trick or treat. It's the T and the R together. Trick or treat. That's how you can layer in sophistication for that. Okay, let's do it again. Ready? It's October. It's October. Halloween, Halloween. Pumpkins, bats, and spiders. Jack-o'-lantern, witches. Trick or treat. Trick or treat. Okay, we're going to add one more in. I'm debating. Alrighty, it's October, it's October, Halloween, Halloween, pumpkins, bats, and spiders. This is the S. Think about the tension in your mouth when you articulate that. Say it. S. 2 fingers on one finger, lots of tension. S. Like a snake, okay? Pumpkins, bats, and spiders, jack-o'-lanterns, witches, trick or treat, trick or treat. Okay? Let's add one more in. Let's do that. Okay. It's October. It's October. Halloween. Halloween. Pumpkins, bats, and spiders, jack-o'-lanterns, witches, trick or treat, trick or treat. Okay, so what have we done? J, T, S, P, O, short O, H. Now think about that. Over the course of a week, you're immersing kids, even if you're not working with those sounds in depth, you're immersing them in sounds that might be coming later, that they're going to need to know down the road. And so that's the goal, is to keep layering it in, layering it in, layering it in. Now, at the end of the working on that poem on Monday, what I might say to the kids, what was the poem about? What was the poem about? Halloween. It was about Halloween. Was it about something else? Think about the title of the poem. What was the title of the poem? It's about October, and it talks about Halloween, but it also was about October and things is it sounds we hear in October? No. I'm sorry?
Things you see.
It's things you see in October. This poem, It's October, is about things we see in October. You just did a summary statement. In terms of the routines, on Monday, you orally, what was the poem about? That's one of the routines. Okay? Then with first grade and second grade, not with kindergarten, you would say to them, okay, let's take the word October. Show me which window in the vowel house October would be. Where would you find October in the vowel house?
Short O.
You could find it in the short O. Why? Okay. So some kids would say October. Okay. Where else could you find it? In the so I heard somebody say Here we are in the E-R-I-R-U-R, This is the motion for it, Okay, what else? In the long O. So if some kids could say it goes in the ah window, and they would write October there. Some kids might say October and write it with the ER. You're still moving them into listening for those vowel sounds. You're immersing them in it. And you took what if you said the word bats? What window would the word bats go in?
Short A.
In the short A, in the ah window. This is the ah window. Ready? Ah, ah, ah. It's taking two words out of the poem and going over and finding them in the vowel house. You're immersing them in it. And they're justifying why they're putting it there. And that's allowing you to see what their justification is. That's important. You don't want to say, I'm thinking I want him to go to the ah window. You're thinking, he's showing me that he heard He heard the ending sound. Think about how many kids don't listen and read through to the end of a word. They're not even aware of it, half of them. We do so much work at the beginning on look at the beginning sound, that we have a whole lot of kids who don't read through to the end. Focusing on those ending sounds is a really important piece. That student is probably a little more sophisticated than the one who's only listening at ah. Okay? Let's do another one. We're going to do a different poem. Stand back up. I'll let you sit in a minute. We're going to do bats. All right? Ready? Bats go high, bats go low. Bats go fast, bats go slow. Bats go up, bats go down. Bats fly all around. Okay, let's do it with me. Ready? Bats go high, bats go low. Bats go fast, bats go slow. Bats go up, bats go down. Bats fly all around. Okay, we're going to add one. Ready? Bats go high, bats go low. Bats go fast, bats go slow. Bats go up, bats go down. Bats fly all around. Why was that hard? I thought that was hard to do. And if I did that with kids, I probably would stop. Why was that so hard to do?
If you're the same arm, you're like doing a motion, you have to do another one.
It was too quick. And what happened to us in terms of our rhythm and prosody of the poem? We took it out of the rhythm of the poem. We would be better off going, bats go high, bats go low. Bats go fast, bats go slow. Bats go up, bats go down. Bats fly all around. When you take it out of the rhythm of the poem, it's very hard to get fluency. It didn't feel fluent when we did that.
I have a question.
Sure.
I noticed when you did fast, and then
Fast.
fly, is that an FL sound?
I was doing all. I was doing all.
Oh, okay.
This is the aw.
Okay.
This is fly. That's a good question. So I said bats fly all around. This is the aw sound. In the vowel house, it's that window, one of the diphthongs over here on the side. It's this one. And another way to spell the AW sound is an A with an L, like an all, an awk, talk. That's a secondary spelling for the aw sound. So aw. Okay, go ahead.
What level poems are those for?
Depends on the grade. The bats poem I think I pulled from first grade. Might have been kindergarten even, because you could use it for opposites with kindergarten. If you only focused on the bee. The October song, you're doing for a whole month. So any of the monthly poems, you work on for a whole month. So you might be doing the ah for the whole first week. Then you're layering other sounds in. These are monthly poems meant to be done every day over the course of the month. By the end of the month, you'll have kids, even your preschoolers and kindergartners will be adding in whole lots of some ending sounds that they start to be aware of. Like you'll see some kids going, pumpkins, bats. They hear the plural at the end of the end of the word by the end of the month. Okay, that's a good question. Anything else? Okay, sit down. So, if you think about the routines, we did the poem a few times, 2 or 3 times. We then wrote a summary, orally did a summary statement on Monday. We would do that. With first and second grade, we took a couple words from the poem and took them to the vowel house. It took about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. It does not take a lot of time. You have one kid who goes up. You have a kid who you're trying to see where they are. It's easy to have them either pick a word or you pick a word and say, go show me which window you'd put it in. Okay? On Tuesday, we would write the summary statement. And that might be what we would write on the language calendar as our summary statement, which I'll take you over there later and do one. Okay? Questions? I don't show it the first or second time through, but by Monday they would still see it on Monday. But when I'm trying to immerse them into the sound perception, I don't want them reading it. And there's a variety of reasons, but if I can give you, let's see if I'm looking for one that has, if kids are reading it, like if they're doing, if they're reading something and the word starts with I'm trying to think of one of the nursery rhymes that we use. We're going to do some nursery rhymes later, so. I'm trying to go through the words to get the example that I want to show you. Oh, I know what it is. It followed her to where the lamb was sure to go in one of the verses on Mary Had a Little Lamb. If they're reading, and it's their first few times through that poem, and they see S-U-R-E, they're reading, they're going to do the motion for the S. Because their sound perception isn't there yet. They're looking at the visual and they're seeing that S, and they're going to say, and it's not sir, it's sure, it's sh. The KMP would be the sh sound, and that S-U-R-E is a word that would go on to the word wall. It doesn't fit the rules. It would be a word wall word. And so it's important for them to have been immersed in the sound system first, and then give them the visual. And then when you get to the visual, if you have a pointer, which I don't, you might go, okay, let's read it. It's October. Ready? Let's just read it. It's October. It's October. Halloween. Halloween. Pumpkins, bats, and spiders. Jack-o'-lanterns, witches. Trick or treat. Trick or treat. And if the phonic focus for that poem was the P, with little kids, you'd go back and you'd highlight all the P's you found in the poem, the letter, so that they're looking for that letter match. With first graders, you might be working on the plural, S at the end, looking for all the S's, and then you're starting to point out, it can be at the beginning of the word or the end of the word. Listen, I hear spiders, spiders. I hear it at the beginning and the end. So you might be going through and tallying how many letters are there or whatever, but you're taking them then to the printed, and you're pointing out what it is you want them to be focusing on. You're telling them what to attend to. Not all of them will be attending to what you plan, but the majority of them will. And the research that Bruce McCandless, and I have a slide on it later, is that he calls what teachers need to be doing selective attention, where you're selecting what it is you want the kids to be attending to. It can be within the vowel house, it can be within the poetry where you're working on a phonic sound and you're working on that letter. It could be on something on the language calendar, but you're telling them what's important in that piece and part. And the research is that that focus of selective attention builds brain pathways within the one hemisphere and cross hemispheres, and it helps kids develop that word recognition piece. He said that teachers shouldn't be called teachers, they should be called learning engineers, because you're building the tracks in their brains. And your decision making on what it is that you're focusing kids on is helping to do that. Okay? Questions? Now think about how many motions we've done in 2 poems. Think about that. Just by immersing them in it. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, like, as you're doing this with the kids, and I'm sure as you looked out, I know I wasn't doing the motions very well and stuff, would you kind of gauge introducing additional motions kind of based on how quickly the kids are picking up on
Well,
ones, or would you kind of move along?
I move them along, and the reason I do that is because you don't really know in terms of their sound systems what is already really in place. So by moving them along, some of the things that you think that they might not be, quote, ready for, their sound system may have already identified with ease. So I just keep immersing them in it. And I will tell you, you'll have a little kid who in December, when everybody else in October was able to hear the shh and realize that the SH, when you wrote it on the calendar, was the shh sound. You'll have a little kid in December or January who'll go, look, come here, I want to show you this. And they'll show you that SH, and he's just gotten it then. But you've allowed him to practice it and try it over time. And when the student gets it, it will it fills in for them. And some of the stuff, it's like sometimes when I was teaching, stuff that they found very easy to do surprised me sometimes, because I thought it was going to be harder for them. But some of the stuff that I thought was going to be really a simple process for them wasn't. And a lot of that depends on their background knowledge of what they have, their linguistic pieces and parts that they have, their sound systems. If you have kids in English as second language learners or hearing impaired kids, their sound systems are different. And they still don't hear it. A hearing impaired kid, even with a cochlear implant, does not hear it like you and I hear it. Their sound system is very different. In fact, when they first started doing cochlear implants, they did them on adults who'd lost their hearing, because they could tell them what a bird sounded like and what it sounded like with an implant. Because the implants have 35 channels or so I think the most now is like 36 channels. And they're like, supposedly what the kids say is that they hear almost like a clicking when they first get the implant. It's the sound, like the computer kind of working in their brain. It goes away, they don't pay attention to it after a while, but that initial piece is how they're perceiving it. So I just continue to go. We just move, we keep going. Because your goal is to provide multiple opportunities. And it might take this student 3 opportunities, and it might take this kid 300. But the more you immerse them in them and the more you do it with them, the more they will, those opportunities are provided. And I'll tell you, the kids, when kids don't need it anymore, they stop using some of the motions and they only pull it up when they get stuck. It's, you know, like it's like that zone of, what they call the zone of proximal development. When they need it, they use it, and when they don't need it anymore, they drop it. But when they get stuck on something, you'll notice it in, especially with first and second and third graders, in their writing, when they're trying to write something, they're developing, clapping out a multisyllabic word and trying to put it together. You'll see them kind of under the table trying to do the motion and then writing it. So they drop it when they don't need it in terms of the KMPs. The other pieces and parts, they continue to develop and extend. Okay, other questions? Okay, I'm gonna have to get up again. We're gonna do some more. Let's do a couple nursery rhymes. So let's start with Mary Had a Little Lamb. Okay, ready? I'm going to do a lot with you as we go through this. I'm not going to do just one sound. I'm going to just immerse you in it, okay? Mary, when you do the M, it's up here and it's lots of pressure and tension. Mary had a little lamb, you did the H, good for you. Good for you. Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece. This is the F. It's lots of tension, and it's not pushing it out. You really feel it in here. Fleece. And the F sound is one of the sounds that you need to do early, before kids lose their teeth. Because it's really hard to produce an F sound when you don't have any front teeth. So, its fleece was white as snow. And this is the W, let me show you. White as snow. Okay, sorry. Let's do it again. Ready? Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow. This is everywhere that Mary went, Mary went, Mary went. Everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. Okay, we'll do it again. We'll start at the beginning. When you do this is the shh, you're like compressing air, lots of tension, shh. You'll have the kids who will turn bright red, like they're trying to, stuff it in there. But that's okay, because you want them to feel the tension. And you have a lot of kids who have slurpy SHs when they talk. They spit, and those kids, a lot of them are in speech, get speech therapy. So, okay, start at the beginning. When you do the L, it's very loose. Think about what your tongue's doing for the L. La, 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 la. It's dropping down. La, la. Okay? Question? Do you guys have a question?
Well, I feel like I want to go twice, like a little. Like when
Well, you're doing the beginning and the ending of lit, but you would have to do lit.
But if it's just an L word like love,
Right.
does it matter?
Yeah, it's just one. It's love. When we went little lamb, if I was doing lamb on the come up, I wasn't doing the L and the second L in little. I was doing the initial in lamb. So, little lamb.
I just have to remember L is just a one.
It is. So if you were doing, you would do lollipop, because you would have an L in the middle there, lollipop, okay? But if you were doing listen, or you were doing Lacey, line up, Lacey, line up,
So
you know?
it wasn't just this, it's this or this?
It can be either.
Okay.
It's just this motion, but the reason I was doing it on the upward was because to go like up, back up again, it takes it out of the fluency and the prosody of the poem. So I was trying to keep the rhythm of the poem, okay? Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow. Everywhere that Mary went, Mary went, Mary went. Everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. The G is like a gate, swinging. Your elbows in, G, okay? It followed her to school one day, school one day, school one day. It followed her to school one day, which was against the rules. Rules, rules, okay. I'm thinking of the last, okay. It made the children, Terry would do this sometimes. It's that C with the lots of tension in your wrist. It made the children laugh and play, laugh and play, laugh and play. It made the children laugh and play to see a lamb at school. Okay? Questions? You guys are doing great. I'm going to have you sit for a minute. So when we think about the sounds that we've done, I'm just going to hang that right here. I don't want that. I want those other markers. I know not to write through the paper. I learned that the hard way. Okay, so what sounds have we done so far? Just start saying them. H, okay. M, L, P, okay. S. I'm sorry? F, right? G, sorry, I can't hear very well. My mask makes my ears not work so well. D. Sort of, okay. The E, short E, right? SH, okay. CH. The short O, okay. Think about the Bats poem. We did the B, okay. T, we did do T, you're right. Oh, the AW, good, that's right, we did that. The aw, it's like a toboggan. The aw, okay. We did a J. W. Any others? Let's see. I think I showed you the short U, but we didn't spend much time. This is like up. So you could go, bats go high, bats go low, bats go fast, bats go slow, bats go up, bats go down, bats fly all around. And we did the R, that's another one we didn't. Now think about that we've just through immersion. I will tell you that my kindergartners, I had kindergarten and first, well, I had every grade. I started my career at 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and then I moved down to K1 and 2. And I still tutor a 9th grader. So, but if you think about what you were asking kids in terms of that immersion piece, by January of kindergarten, my kids knew all of their consonants and could identify them with the letter. They knew most of their short vowels. They had trouble with short E and short I. They could do the motion, but they didn't. I had hearing impaired kids, they didn't perceive it. It was too hard for them to perceive, a lot of them. And they knew the digraphs of SH, CH, TH by January of kindergarten, and knew how to write them within their journals. I didn't bring their journals today, but they were actually writing a lot in their journal. Okay, questions? Now, let's pretend that we're doing pumpkin, we're doing the letter P. And I have my slate. This is the reading and writing monster. All right? The reading and writing monster, when Terry introduces it, she introduces him as a playful character. He's drawn this way so every kid can draw it themselves. And when you look at the website, which I'm going to take you to in a little bit, there's actually paper now that you can print off that has the reading and writing monster on it. Some with lines, some with no lines, some with space for an illustration at the top, some with lines below it, different widths, whatever, I guess widths. But the handwriting stories are to help kids know that either you're going to the monster or you're getting away from the monster. Okay, and he's trying to pull you into trouble sometimes, and you need to kind of get away from him. So when I'm doing the P in pumpkin, and I want in kindergarten that's one of the early sounds. It's in August and September. It's one of the first sounds you do. MP, T, S, and F are the first 5 sounds and consonants that are the highest in piece. So I introduce the reading and writing master, and what do I tell them? I say P. P is a powell. What is P? P is a powell. All of the handwriting stories have within the story itself, the motion piece is fit within there so that you can reinforce the K and P at the same time you're doing the handwriting story. So P is a powell. What is P? He's a powell, gone down fishing. He goes down, he comes back up, and he puts his belly on the line. P is a powell. Now, you can even draw it with a line, so you can, that isn't good because I drew it up too high. Let me draw the line. You might want to draw the line first. So P is a powell, gone down fishing. Because what happens when kids are writing on lined paper is they write pumpkin, and they have it up here and as a capital letter, which it really isn't. It's, depending on where it is in a sentence, but okay. So P is a powell, gone down fishing, come back up, put your belly on the line. Now I will say, I didn't use much lined paper with my kids, even in kindergarten. I just didn't. I wanted them to be pretty perfect with the stroke before I added the variable of trying to fit it on a line. The amount of motor planning that a little kid needs to do to know when to go and when to start to get it so I can get that P touching that line is a lot. It's a lot of motor planning. So I wanted to make sure the stroke was in place before I added the variable of the line.
So I noticed there was, and I think, I don't know if this was added since March, but I noticed there was PDF handwriting paper on the website.
Yes.
So that theoretically, the could give each student that handwriting paper with, and I noticed there's some with lines and without.
Right.
So they could, in kindergarten, give that paper without lines and
Correct.
have the students practice the
Right,
story too.
right, absolutely. And when I did handwriting with the kids in kindergarten, I would be doing, okay, let's make a big P. Let's pretend there's no line here, because my kids use slates, and we use slates a lot, and with no lines on them. And even if there were lines, they disregarded them anyway, so it didn't matter. They, the motor planning, I heard a speaker one time at a conference talking about how kids develop. And they develop from the midline out. And the last thing that develops are the tips of their fingers. And you have a lot of 7-year-old boys who still are not developed at the tips of their fingers. And when you're asking them to put it into a minute space for them, they literally can't do it. And it's not that they don't know what to do, it's they don't have the motor control yet to do it. So, but I would do things like, okay, we'd make a P. So let's do the P. P is a pole. What is P? It's a pole. Gone down fishing, come back up and put your belly on the line. Can you make a teeny tiny P? Let's make a gigantic P. P is a pole. Gone down fishing, come back up and put your belly on the line. Takes 5 minutes. You're scanning. It's easy to scan. You can say, hold up your board, let me see it. But you're also scanning those kids that you think, and the reason kids have reversals when they're writing is because their initial stroke isn't correct. So you'll see kids doing C. C thinks she's cute. She goes to the monster. Now you'll watch them. C goes to the monster and comes away. What does that tell you? What does that tell you when a kid says, C goes to the monster and comes away? They don't have the language of to. And we assume they do because they say it all the time. But they don't know what to means. A to is going towards. It's going to it. The initial stroke is where they mess up. If they're doing S and they do, I'm writing upside down, so I have to go here. S is so silly. It's the initial stroke that throws them. That's why they tend not to have reversals with some of those other letters that are not difficult. Because the initial stroke is, but you have a lot of kids who write up top to bottom to top, not top to bottom, especially in kindergarten and preschool. They write O's from the bottom to the top. And I'm going to tell you the letter you should spend the most time with is O, because it is the base of so many letters. They need to know, and I have in the slideshow, we'll go to it in a minute. You go up to the stars, O, I got away. Because it's in the O, it's in the D, it's in the G, it's kind of in the E, depending on how you form your E. Some people do the E and then add the line. Some people do the escape. Depends on the handwriting system you're using. But it's a really critical letter. And you'll see kids, you can tell when they're writing. They go like this. You can see where they started. It needs to be cemented. I go up to the stars. Oh, I got away. Okay, questions? Now I'm going to show you on here. So if I go to here, these are the poems. And I'm going to show you on the website, all the poems are now out on the website for you. You can go into the website. Let me go escape here and go to Phonics in Motion. I'm going to open, if you go under Learning, I was off too long, I guess.
You have to check the box.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. All right, let me go back to phonics in motion now. Oop. So if you go here under the Learning tab, this is where a lot of the new resources are for you, and I'm going to show you some in a minute. But if you look here, the monthly poems from the literacy routines are there. They're in a PDF. Oh, you open by grade level. So I'm just opening second grade right here. And they're by month. And they're there. So you can open it up. Teachers can open it and have it up there if they don't want to write it on chart paper. They're there. You can copy and paste them in a document for like a poetry notebook. If your kids have a poetry notebook, copy it, paste it, run it off, paste it in the poetry notebook. But they're there by grade level for every poem that's available for that month. So these are all the October poems. Poetry is one of the best things you can do for vocabulary. The vocabulary that's available in poetry is just stunning. In the September poem, one of the poems last month was about, I don't know, it had the word crisp fall days. And I did something with some teachers in another district, and we talked about just taking that one word. What does that mean, crisp? Does it mean like a potato chip? You know, and when you think back to that science of reading, that word recognition and language, that's the things we need to be quickly pointing out to kids as we're working with them. What's another word we could use? He could have said chilly. He could have said cool. He could have said, freezing, whatever. It's the conversation that you need to be having with kids when you're talking about what's there. It's not just read it and put it away. It's talk about the language. There's so much beautiful language in poetry. So those are available for you on the website now. All right, where'd my mouse go here? Now I'm going to go back to my thing here. Let me go back to the present. So here were the poems, some of the different poems, which we're going to do some more in a little bit. There's the Bats poem. They're all have beautiful illustrations. They're just beautiful. And I highly recommend, you can actually take that document and copy it into a document and send it home if you're doing hybrid. Send it home and the kids put it in their poetry notebook. They should have a poetry notebook that they're developing this year. Post it to the, Then we're going to do some segmenting and blending in a minute, but a follow-up for the poetry is an activity called Fun Poetry. And it's, as of right now, there's some samples of it, but I think coming in November or December, there will be a Fun Poetry worksheet that you give it to the kids on Monday and send it home. And it's something they do through the course of the week and they bring it back on Friday. It's not something teachers are spending other than giving it and But anyway, I'm hoping by November or December that there will be a Fun Poetry activity for every poem of the week. But if we're doing the Bats, the pumpkin poem, or no, let's use the It's October. Yeah. The It's October poem. So how many lines are in the poem? 8, okay. How many words are in the first line? 2, okay. How many words, find a word that's one syllable. Okay. Find a word that's more than one syllable. Okay, it could be October. It could be pumpkins. One of the things that teachers need to be checking is whether kids can clap syllables. Because if they can't clap syllables, and a lot of your 3rd and 4th graders can't, they can't decode a multisyllable, they can't write a multisyllabic word easily because you write the word by syllable, by syllable, by syllable. And our vowel sounds and spellings operate from the syllable level. They need to be able to find a syllable. They need to be able to clap it. And you'll see some kids going, October. They don't have that one-to-one match yet on syllables. And so in the language calendar, every day you clap a one-syllable word and you clap a multisyllabic word with the kids. You do it every day. And you write it, you mark it, the sweeps. It's critical. It's a critical skill for kids to have. And there are a whole lot of 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders that don't have it yet. They really don't, okay? Say the word bat. Can you think of 3 words that rhyme with it? Write them there. So that would be the kind of fun poetry piece that would go home on Monday. It's part of the routine. And we're really hoping that by November we'll have them for each of the poems for every month. Because I said to Karina the other day, who's the Phonics in Motion person in California, that if it's something that we're considering a routine, we should provide it. So I'm going to be writing them between now and, at least the November ones, between now and when the November goes out onto the website. Okay, so this is the fun poetry. This is after the first week of school, 2 weeks of school, 3 weeks of school, you've given it out every Monday. Kids bring it back on Friday. It's a routine. So if you think about Monday, in terms of your literacy routines with the KMPs, you're doing poetry, you're introducing the poem, you're choral reading it a couple times, you might echo read it line by line, you're pulling out the phonic focus, you're doing that KMP, for 1st and 2nd grade, you're pulling 1 or 2 words out that you take to the Vowel House, and you hand them the fun poetry paper that they have to bring back on Friday. And you do a summary statement, an oral summary statement. It takes maximum of 10 minutes. And I always did it as part of my morning meeting. My poetry was part of my morning meeting with the kids. It set the climate for the day. We revisited it sometimes after lunch when they came back from a special, before we sat down to do a language calendar entry or something. So Tuesday, you do a different activity that's called My Words. It starts the week blank. The students choose 2 words on Monday that they like from the poem, and they write them in one of the boxes. So if they're doing the It's October poem, they might pull Halloween out, and they have to take the word has to be taken from the poem, and then they write it in the box. I'm going to draw here. So if I have my words paper with little kids with kindergarten, it has 6 boxes. I don't think it has 9. I think it only has 6. Okay, and they choose Halloween. They write it in the box. They have to copy it from the poem. Okay, and then they illustrate it. And if it's a word that they choose, like let's say they choose the word and, because it's a sight word maybe that you've developed, they just decorate the box. So they might take colored markers or colored pencils, and they might do, like this and then like this. And they might, underline the "ah" to help them remember "and," okay? This one, maybe they draw, a pumpkin. They pick what they want. They're illustrating it. The research on kids having control of words they like is powerful. There's a whole reading strategy called the Curious George strategy that you read a third of a book with them. They choose 5 words, I think 5 words, or maybe, I think 5 words. You put them on an index card. The next day you read the second third of the book. They choose 5 more words. The last day you do the other third. By the end of the time they have 15 words that are part of their word ring. It gets into their vocabulary and their sight word much quicker than you telling them what are the important words. They're picking it. They're telling them. Sometimes they pick ones that are tricky for them, and sometimes they pick ones they just like. And think if you have a kid who's reading and he likes the word crisp. Oh, I love that word. I think that's a cool word. I choose the word crisp. I'm going to put that on there. And maybe I put a thermometer that shows that it means that it's cold. I have a mental picture in my brain of what that word means. So that's the My Words. And with little kids, there's
Real quick, what grade level is that starting in the My Words?
My Words and My Letters actually starts in kindergarten.
So are they writing the words in kindergarten too?
Yeah, they're copying them from they're literally copying them from the poem. And with littler kids, you may start with what they call My Letters, which I have to think about what the paper looks like. It has the reading and writing monster with online, so he's over here. And let's say they're picking their letter is the P letter, so they practice writing the P. They practice writing the P a couple times. And then you brainstorm with them. Early in the year, I probably would start with My Letters and move to My Words by January. That would be me. And then you brainstorm words that start with P. Oh, a pencil. Oh, I'm going to draw a pencil. You know, again. Oh, a pig. A pig. Okay? Oh, a paper. I'm going to draw a paper. Again, it's a great way to build vocabulary with them too. And they pick 2 or 3 words that they illustrate. They don't write the word, they're just they're drawing the picture. Okay? And if you have a student who struggles with drawing, you know, you can use some clip art or something like that. You can have, I had magazines in my classroom that they would go look through magazines, pancakes, you know, and they'd find a picture of a pancake stack and they'd glue those on. So it'd look like this. They'd have that picture there of the pancakes. Maybe one week I would do that where they drew it, and one week I'd let them look through magazines and find 3 things that start with P. You know, pants, you know. And a lot of times it was interesting because what I found was that sometimes what they named the picture wasn't what I would have named the picture, but it was a great way to see what their vocabulary, and B, what their you know, like some kids that have a picture of a pop bottle and some kids would call it soda, that type of thing. And if they put it on there, like if they put the soda bottle on under P, if they said soda, I would say, wait a minute, what do you hear in soda? What do you hear in pop? You know, so they would do it that way. Okay? So that's, and those are in the learning section also. All of the blanks for those and samples are there on the website. Let me show you. Let me go back here to the learning. If you go on the website and you go to under individual worksheets, there's some sample fun poetry that you can see at the beginning. And then keep clicking down. There's 47 more things here. You can go to My Words. Here's a pre-K example for My Words. 2 words. They're picking 2 words only. Okay? And let me go back. Let's go back here to I want it, yeah. Oops, sorry. It's in a different section. If you go down, again, under individual worksheets, here's My Words here's a first grade, here's a kindergarten example, which is more complex. See? If you look, crayon and markers and pencils are all things kids could, and you know, if you have kids you're working on technology with them and you want them to learn how to use clip art, it's a great way to do it. Have them look for something on there and help them find it, you know. And then the and obviously can't be, you don't draw a picture of and, you just decorate the box to make it look cool. Okay, so that's all there for teachers now, those samples, but the blank papers are there also. There's samples available for them to see.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you recommend doing this with a whole class, like everyone's on the same thing, or can you differentiate? If you have some kids that are just ready to do letters, they can do letters. You have kids maybe that are ready to do 6 or even 9 words.
I would, excuse me, I would do, for the my words, I would do it the whole class doing the same kind of thing. I might have a second part when I was pulling a guided reading group that I was focusing on with that guided reading group that was maybe a little more sophisticated or less sophisticated depending on the group. But the rationale for this is, number one, kids having control of the words that they find interesting. And that makes a difference in terms of their usage of them and their development of getting them in their brain. And it's also something to get them into the routine. So after the 3rd or 4th week of school, when you put the My Words paper up on the workboard and they know they have to have it turned in by Friday for you to look at it, then you don't have to explain how to do it. It's there, it's done, they know how to do it. It's you develop the routine. And then what I did with my words, it went in their reading notebook. And so they had their own dictionary of words that they knew that they liked. And when they went to write something that they didn't know how to write, they knew they'd drawn it. They pretty much remember that stuff because it's ownership. And they would then refer back into their binder and find it. Okay? Other questions?
So you said you did the My Words, that was a whole group activity.
Well, yeah, it was a whole group at the beginning of the year. At the end, probably after week 4, each child they chose their own individual words. I modeled the ones I liked. So I said, this is my words paper. I like the word bats, and I'm going to draw bats on my paper. You could pick a different word, but I'm going to draw bats. And so I would write bats on my paper as my sample, and then I would draw my bats. And I'd draw more than one because we would have talked about it. So, but somebody else could pick jack-o'-lantern or witch. I didn't care. And it was words that came from the poetry we were doing. So it could be from the monthly poem or the weekly poem, because there's a poem a week too. So, and by the end of the week, they had the 9 boxes filled. They only added 2 words a day. They didn't add all 9 words on the first day. They added 2 words on Monday, 2 words on Tuesday, 2 words on Wednesday, 2 words on Thursday, and usually just 1 to finish up, or maybe 3 on Thursday. Okay? So, down here. This is another paper that they use with older kids. The words I like, same idea. I tend to like the My Words, but you could do, when you use this paper, they choose 5 words they like, and then the other words are words that are sight words that you are building, that you're trying to build into their repertoire. And you're probably telling them what those are that you want. It might be ones you've highlighted on the poem that you want them to include. Okay. Now, the reading and writing monster. I kind of modeled him for you. When you go to the website now, all of the reading and writing monster stories are animated. Let me go back to, Phonics in Motion. Let me just go back to Phonics in Motion. Didn't want me to delete it. Alrighty, let's try again. All right, forget it. Let me try it this way. that. I'm just going to go back again. It's easier to start over. I don't want slides. Sorry. Technology is not my friend. I want to go here. Here we go. So if I go under the, when you look at the website now and you open it up, across the top you see literacy routines, which are by grade level. And different teachers have different access depending on their grade level. You have the KMP library, and that is the videos of all the motions for all the digraphs, all the individual sounds, and even some chunks. So if you look here, they're all there. Short, long A, short A, ang, ank, r, aw. They're all there in alphabetical order, okay? When you go to the animation section, this has, opening it, all of the handwriting stories that are animated. So if I go to P, these are, first it has lowercase, then uppercase, and then it actually has a letter story. So if I go to P and I open P, it's opening.
P is a pole that goes down fishing. P is a pole that goes down fishing. Up, 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 and a pot belly away from the monster.
Okay, they're all animated there. And if you go further down under animations, there's the uppercase for all of the letters. And these are the letter ID parts. So for preschool and kindergarten, and early, maybe even first graders who are struggling and don't know letter ID yet very well, you can open these.
Sorry, what did you say that was?
It's under, it's under animations, letter ID.
Key, hair.
So there's an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, and a initial sound, a word with it as its initial sound. Now, all of those videos, the KMP library and the animations, are also located under the distance learning. But the distance learning section is password protected. Let me open it, if it'll come. It's opening. They're all there, but when you open it up, there's a short video about using distance learning for teachers. It's not for parents. But all of them are there. But you can literally cut and paste the links down below here. So like if I'm doing the letter P down here, let me go to P. Where did it go? M-L-L-O-O-O-O. Onk. Oh, here's P. I can click down here below. Do you see this down here below? You can cut and paste that into a document, send it home to parents, and in the document, and tell them that their password is I love PIM, I-L-O-V-P-I-M, Phonics in Motion, PIM. And they will be able to open every one of those animations themselves at home.
Sure, repeat the password again, I'm sorry.
I love PIM, P-I-M, for Phonics in Motion. All lowercase, yeah, it doesn't really matter, but yes. So, I could take, in my Google Slides here, if I go down here to one further down, I can send home a video of the KMP with the link for parents, a video of how to form the lowercase letter, a video, an animation of the uppercase letter. They're all there. You can cut and paste them right in there. The letter ID, I can literally open the poem and cut that document, copy that document and paste it into there also, so they have it. It will come up with the PowerPoint, that page that you're doing. And then any of the handwriting worksheets that go along with it. They're all there. That you can just, teachers can literally just go, like if I open this one here, this is the lowercase letter, and this is how it opens up for parents. And then all they have to type in is I love Pim, and hit submit, and up will come that same screen.
J.
So this is for J.
Jerk. J goes down and right to the monster.
He's a jerk. That's the story, the handwriting story for it. Why is he a jerk? Because he goes to the monster. Okay? But you can literally send those home to parents. And they can open them up. All they have to do is type in I love Pim. And for your kids who are learning remotely on the opposite days, put them on something that they have to open that day on Seesaw. Put the link on there. And they can open it and play it and play it and play it and play it, and they will. They will play it, till it drives their parents crazy probably, but they love them. And there's one for every KMP, and even some chunks like the ang and the onk, because really that's an onk, onk. We're going to do some more motions in a minute, but questions? There's a lot there. And then you can literally go back to the website. Let's see here. Let me go back here. So if I go back under learning for pre-K, K, and early first grade, if you look under the worksheets, booklets, there's one for each letter. So if I open up the alphabet poem book, I think this is it. There's one for every letter. A is for astronaut, A is for alligator, A is for ants on my pants, and there's one for every single letter in the alphabet. There then is also, to support teachers, let me go back. There's also handwriting. So if you go under those individual, let's see here, wait a minute, let me go under Reading and Writing Monster, which is the handwriting. There's handwriting worksheets for pre-K and then K1. So if you open that, it's the same thing. It's those same kind of books. All right? And there's the handwriting for them. It's right there. And at the end, they evaluate what's their best handwriting, picking their letter that they think they wrote the best. So all of that is there. The teachers can just kind of pull together into a document that they send. They can copy that page and put it into another document to send it home. And I will tell you, everything is in more than one place. I'll tell you that. A lot of the stuff is in 2 or 3 places, so that if teachers find it a different way, they can, but it's not, you have to go this way to get to it. It's always in at least more than one place. A lot of them are in 2 or 3 places. Okay, questions? When you're thinking about literacy routines with teachers, and teachers are trying to develop them with their kids now, I mean Fontes and Pinnell talk about the first 6 weeks of school. That's what you're doing. You're not doing a lot of new learning. You're building the routines that are going to allow you to teach after those first 6 weeks. If the routines are not in place, you're going to be spinning your wheels all year. They always told us, slow down. You'll get to where they need to be, but if the routines are not in place, you're going to struggle the whole year. So setting up the routines and investing the time in doing it is critical. Okay, let's do a few more what time is it? I don't have a clue. 2 o'clock, okay. Let's do a few more KMPs, and then we're going to go over and work on the language calendar a little bit. Okay, let's get up. Let me get a drink of water. Talking 3 hours in a mask is not easy. Any teacher, I applaud you. I said, I'm going to tell the girl when I go to get my hair cut, don't talk to me because I know you have to be exhausted. After you've talked to client after client after client the whole day, you have to be exhausted. Okay, let's do, well, let's review Mary Had a Little Lamb, and then we'll do another nursery rhyme or two, okay? So let's do it. Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow. The short E is like, first of all, you'll watch kids and they're doing this or they're doing this. They need to be looking at their manicure and their thumbs are pointing away from them. And it's like, it's very quick. And there's a little bit of tension to do short E. Terry always does this, like try to do it with your elbows. It's very short and lots of tension. So, it's like it's hot. And you, Everywhere that Mary went, Mary went, Mary went. Everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. It followed her to school one day, school one day, school one day. It followed her to school one day, which was against the rules. It made the children laugh and play, laugh and play, laugh and play. It made the children laugh and play to see a lamb at school. Okay, good. Let's do the P and the what? P is this. It's p, 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 p. And the S is you're holding it 2 fingers on 1 finger. Now Terry used to a long time ago do this, and she stopped, and I'll tell you why. Because when you get into doing blends, we'll do segmenting and blending in a minute. When you try to do a blend, you don't have time to do this. If you're doing st, you don't have time to go st. So it's st, st, st. Or let's do sp, sp. That's a really hard one to do, I think. Sp, sp. Okay, or sol, like in sleep. Sol. You land on the L. You land on the second sound in a blend. So when you're doing segmenting and blending with kids and you're doing, say the word stop, stop. When I do that, you do that. Say the word stop, stop. Okay, now you get ready and you land on the second sound. So st, you jump forward, okay, when you're doing a gross motor. St. So you got the S and you land on the T. St. And then you would do up, okay? Let's do some blending, segmenting and blending. Let's start without blends, though. Just 3 sound. So let's do, say the word shop, shop. Say the word shop, shop. What's the first sound? Shh, good, okay. Cut it. Take a step to the, you're going to your right. You're going from left to right. Okay, I'm backwards because I'm facing you. The teacher's going the other direction. I'm going from right to left, but you don't know that. Okay, let's start again. Say the word shop, shop. Shh. Cut it. Ah. Cut it. P. Okay, let's do it again. Go back. Say the word shop, shop. Shh. Ah. P. Okay, now we're going to blend it. And when you blend it, you cross over on the vowel. Okay? So, and this is what's hard for kids. You have a lot of kids who can't cross the midline. And it's very hard for them to cross that leg in front of the other leg. You have a lot of kids. I'm going to tell you, any of your kids that go for OT, they have trouble with this. So now we're going to blend it. And you cross over on the vowel. All right? Say the word shop. Shop. Sh. Up. Okay? Blend it again. Say the word shop. Shop. Sh. Up. Why didn't I go p p p?
There's not at the end of the word.
Right, and it's a stop P at the end of a word in terms of speech. It's a stop, you hold it. You don't say shoppa, shop. You hold it. Okay, let's say the word top, top. Say the word top, top. Segment it. What do you hear? T, 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 t. One finger in your, with little kids who have trouble, you'll see kids doing this. Give them a cotton ball and have them flick it. It's very hard for some of your kids with motoric issues, okay? Let's do it again. Say the word top, top. Segment it. T. Ah. P. Okay? Segment it again. Say the word top, top. T. Ah. P. All right, now let's blend it. Say the word top, top. T. Ah. P. Okay? Give me another word that you want to segment. Not a multisyllabic. Let's just do a single syllable to start with. Flip, okay? When you do blends, usually you do the first part and you talk about the other part. You don't do if you're doing flip or let's say flop, doesn't matter. You do the blend at the beginning and then you just do the motions for the rest. You don't try to segment it out from there, okay? So let's do flip. Say the word flip, flip. It's a motion you don't know yet, so that's a good one to choose. Full. See how I landed on the L? Full. Full. See how I landed on it? Full. Okay, now when we do it, we'll jump. So we'll go full. Ready? You jump forward. Say the word flip. Flip. Full. All right, this is we haven't done it yet. Let me show you. Oh, it's itty bitty. Did you hear it? Oh, so short, can't hardly hear it. It's short I and short E are the two hardest for the kids to hear, and it's because they're so short. They're so quick in words. So, okay. So you would do full, and then you probably just do ip. Okay? How about another one? How about something with TH? Thumb. Let's do thumb. Say the word thumb. Thumb. We're going to segment it. It's a new motion. You don't know this one. It's up here underneath. Okay, let's segment it again. Say the word thumb. Thumb. Okay, now blend it. Say the word thumb. Thumb. Now you can do the same thing on your arm. Say the word thumb. Ready? Thumb. Ready? Let's do it again. Say the word thumb. Okay? And then you can do, what do you hear at the beginning? You could even do the motion then. What do you hear at the end? Jump it. Okay? All right, questions? Go.
I don't understand the difference between the jumping and the crossing over.
You're only jumping when you're doing a blend.
Okay.
So if you're doing st at the beginning of, or you do the word fast, say the word fast. I'm going to segment it. So say the word fast. Fast. Let's segment it. We haven't done yet. This is And now you're going to, ready? You're going to jump at the end. So you're only jumping on a blend. Okay? And that's really first grade is blends, 2 sound blends. Second grade is 3 sound blends by the curriculum. That's what it is. So you're not doing that in kindergarten. Not appropriate. I mean, some kids might ask for it, especially if you say, oh, what else can you think of that starts with, you know, whatever, or sounds the same. And you'll have little kids, let's say they're doing mop and shop, and then you say, give me another one. And somebody says, mob, which doesn't rhyme. It's not the same. You say, okay, let's do that one. Ready? Say the word mob. Mob. Segment it. B. All of a sudden the kids go, oh, no, because they had done mop and top and shop. And what is that telling them? You're selectively attending to what the difference is. You're showing them, you're demonstrating it, you're giving them the support. You're not saying, oh, that doesn't rhyme. You show it. You have them do it. You have them listen to it and perceive it and go with it. You're giving them the opportunity to make a mistake. It's a risk-free environment. You want them to be able to do that because we learn from our mistakes as compared to the kid who says, oh, no. How about mat? No. How about, you know, they just start guessing randomly. It's because they're not sure of what it is you're asking them. But if you demonstrate it with the KMPs, they see it. They all of a sudden go, oh, no, it's different. That's what I need to be listening for.
And the large movements that you're doing is to really make that connection, that you're segmenting, that you're chunking the sounds into
Correct.
chunks. So
Right.
when you do this,
You're
after the
cutting
sound,
that
we're
sound.
taking the sound's over, we're moving to the new sound.
Right.
And it's the same with the stepping. You're stepping because you're showing that it's flowing.
Yes.
It's new.
And it's moving from left to right.
Right.
And and you're putting that sound. A lot of kids struggle with either segmenting or blending. A lot of kids have more trouble with the blending aspect than they do with the segmenting, surprisingly. Because blending actually, I think, in the hierarchy of phonemic awareness comes first, I think. I think blending is on the hierarchy is easier, but not for most kids. At least my experience is. They like the segmenting better. Putting it together is harder, especially because they have trouble flowing it. Now, in the district bought some whiteboards and I think to accompany Haggerty. Barb sent me a picture of it. And in it there was a picture of it had a whiteboard and then it had a 3 sound piece. You could do that whole group, what we just did, and then had the kids get out their letter tiles and use the letter tiles to accompany it. When I did this with my kids in my class, and we were segmenting and blending, we would say the word mop, and they would say the word mop, and we'd segment it, and we'd blend it, and we'd segment it, and we'd blend it, and then I'd say, okay, go write it. And they got their slates were at their desk with their markers, and they would go, well, not this marker, caught it, and they would go, mop. And you'd see the kids going, mop, and they would be.
Okay, I'm just thinking, we have limited space, and I'm thinking about keeping kids kind of in a little self-contained little bit of an area. So they might not be able to have the space to do the stepping. So you did show us an alternative way
Right.
of doing it with the arm. So teachers who aren't comfortable and they don't feel they have the space in the classroom to do all that,
Correct.
they could always do it
Right,
on the app.
right. And if you think about it, it's different than going up. You're actually, the physical, the gross motor piece is easier for some kids than doing this. This is hard for
And this
some
is
kids.
crossing.
Right,
So that's better than just
right,
staying on
right,
paper.
right. So start with this, go up, and then go to this if that's part of the curriculum. Or you're doing shop, shh, 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 up, but do this first. If they're not doing this, they're not going to be doing this most probably.
That would be better to do on this arm, right, so that you're still.
It doesn't really matter which arm. If your kid's left-handed, or like I'm demonstrating for them, so I wanted to see that it's on their left. Do you see their face? Oh, it's on their right. Sorry, I'm wrong. It doesn't really matter which arm. It depends on which arm is their dominant arm.
I was just thinking for you, if you still.
Right. I did it on this. I'm so right side dominant that I tend to use that arm as my piece. But you'll see kids, and I will say when you segment and blend, and if you're up and moving, when you do it, make sure when you get to that ending sound you're using your other hand. So if I'm doing hop, say the word hop, hop. Say the word hop, hop. Show me. See how I'm using my right hand here? But I used my left hand for the because it's the end. I wanted them to see that this is the beginning and this is the end. So I can go. That's for the teacher, not for the kids, for the teacher. I wanted them to see this is the beginning, this is the end. As compared to crossing over to do the P over here. It's easier to just use my other hand so that they can see it moves left to right. Okay? Other questions? Okay, sit down. So, let's go to the language calendar. And the language calendar, Terry will say, is the glue that holds the program together. It is probably the most critical thing that you do all day with them. Thank you. Okay? When it's introduced at the beginning of the year, it's a daily modeled writing of a shared activity of something you've done with the kids. It's not Joey's uncle came to school, not Joey's uncle came home from, or came to visit, because that only matters to Joey. Doesn't matter to the rest of the group. So it's from a shared experience of something you did either that day or the day previous, depending on when you do language calendar. It is, I did it a couple different times. I did it most successfully when we came back from a special or when we came in from recess or something like that and I wanted to settle them down. Because it's a very focused time and it sets up the ability to then go off and do something else. You don't want to wait and do it in the last 20 minutes of the day because it's too chaotic in the classrooms as kids are packing up. You want it to be done earlier than that. It's planned ahead of time. It is, you know exactly what you want that entry to be that day. You know the language, you know the phonic focus, you might know the vowel spelling at first and second grade that you're working on. But it's taking those content standards and putting them together in an authentic language piece. Every once in a while, something would happen during the day that I wrote my language calendar entry. I had a little classroom because I was in special ed classroom, and it had didn't have a lot of space. I had enough space probably for this, probably not though, on one of my bulletin boards. But originally I wrote it on a 5x8 index card. Well, I wrote it with the class on a whiteboard, on a dry erase board. I had already copied it on a 5x8 index card that I ran off. My kids were hearing impaired. They didn't have a lot of language, especially at kindergarten, first grade. They were developing speech. It was an oral program. They didn't use sign language, so they were developing speech, and my kids had a notebook that it went home in every day. So the parents would know something they did at school as compared to what you do at school today, nothing. there was something we had done today at school in their notebook, in their new quote news book. Okay, so let's pretend when you introduce the language calendar, you introduce it by singing the days of the week song. Okay? There's Sunday and there's Monday, there's Tuesday and there's Wednesday, there's Thursday and there's Friday, and then there's Saturday, days of the week, days of the week, days of the week, days of the week, days of the week. So you introduce that at the beginning of the year. You sing the calendar song. There's a video of it on the website under videos, language calendar, I think days of the week. So there's a video of that. But all teachers sing different days of the week songs. So they can sing whatever they sing for their calendar. Doesn't matter. But integrate the KMPs with it. So by the end of the, after a month in, the kids are going, there's Sunday and there's Monday, there's Tuesday and there's Wednesday, there's Thursday and there's Friday, and then there's Saturday, days of the week, days of the week, days of the week, days of the week, days of the week. Okay, so let's pretend that we've done the poem Pumpkin, Pumpkin, which we haven't done yet. Pumpkin, pumpkin, big and fat, turns to a jack-o'-lantern just like that. Okay, now, after I do this poem I did it with kindergarten, I've done it with first grade. The kids traced a pumpkin. They put it on a craft stick, and then they turn it around and they make the jack-o'-lantern on the other side. So it goes with the poem. Okay, so let's pretend we've got a kindergarten class this time. And I say to the kids, what did we do today? What did we make? What did we make? We did make a jack-o'-lantern. What else did we make? What did we make first, though? We made a pumpkin. And what was our pumpkin made of? Our pumpkin, what was it made of? What do you think? Paper. Okay, good. We made paper pumpkins.
We know how they feel.
That's right.
We're doing that on purpose.
So, with young kids at the beginning of the year, when I'm writing on the language calendar, I say, okay, what did we make? What did we make? Pumpkins. And what were they made of? Paper. We made paper pumpkins. How many words? We made paper pumpkins. We made paper pumpkins. Okay? And then we start. Okay, what did we do? Who did it? We did it. That's right. We. What do you hear? W walks away and walks away. That's a story for W. Okay? We. Now I might just write the E. Made. What do you hear? Made. M goes down and he moves away, moves away. A. What do you hear? A. I hear A. A. And I mark it at the beginning of the year in kindergarten. I put the diacritical marking over there. Even though it's not really a skill, they start to, you'll watch as the time goes on, especially as stuff as you make in kindergarten. They learn that their big mouth E is going to come at the end. So we made d. Now I might just write it, not even talk about it. And I finish, okay? Let's read what we have. We made, what did we make? Paper. Let's clap that. Say the word paper. Clap it with me. Paper. What's the first clap? Pay. Now, if I'm working on P, I'm going to make sure I do the handwriting story. Pay, A. What do you hear? A. Pay. Per. What do you hear? Oh my gosh, there's that sound again. What is it? P. What is it? P is a pole. That's right. P is a pole. Gone dead fishing. And then I might just finish it. We made paper. Paper what? Pumpkins. Okay. pumpkins, all right? What do you hear? Oh my gosh, there it is again. Oops, sorry. I probably wouldn't say anything, I'd just write it. What do you hear? M moves away, moves away. Pump. Oh my goodness, there it is again. And then I just finish it. And then let's read it. We made paper pumpkins. I need to finish this. Okay? And then there's always an illustration. So, because for your kids who aren't reading well yet, the illustration is going to be their cue for the language. And you don't want the language to be too complex that they can't go back and really reread it, especially with young kids at the beginning. Okay? So let's read our news again, our language calendar entry. We made paper pumpkins. All right, now, with first grade, or kindergarten, let's do a first grade entry. Let me see how I want to say it. What did we put on a stick? What did we put on a stick? We put a pumpkin on the stick. That's right. So you're asking the questions that are going to pull the language that you want. Okay? And what kind of stick was it? What do we call that kind of stick? It could be a popsicle stick. We could call it that. Do you know another name for it? Wooden. You could say wooden. That's okay. And with first grade, you might be wanting to focus on that. You might say craft, a craft stick. You could say wooden. It doesn't matter. If you know what you want the language to be. Okay, so maybe if I wanted to get the word wooden, I would say, what was it made of? It was made of wood. Oh, well, then we're going to call that wooden. Okay, so now with first grade, at the beginning of the year, I might draw the lines, but not, it depends on how adept they are at writing, because these are models. These are models for them to use. So what did we do? What did we do with our pumpkins? What did we do with them? Go ahead, tell me.
Put them on a stick.
We put them on a stick. So let's write that. What did we do? We put. Now this is a word wall word. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it because it doesn't fit rules. So it's a sight word that you're going to be developing. And it might be the sight word that you want to develop in that entry. And maybe 2 days later, you're going to we put word web on the wall. You're going to want to, if that's a sight word that you're trying to build in their writing and putting up onto a word wall eventually, you're going to want to spend a little time on it. But you might not want to. You might just want to write it. Okay. What did we put?
Pumpkin.
Whose pumpkins?
Our pumpkin.
Our pumpkins. That's right. Our. This is a new motion. You don't know this. This is ow. Ow. Which window in the Vowel House would you hear the ow? Where's the ow window? Over here. That's right. Ow. Ow. Oh, you stop it. Ow. Ow. Oh, you stop it. Our. What do you hear? So we put our. This might be the word wall word. The sight word you're building. We put our what? What did we put? Did we put our backpacks? What did we put? Our pumpkins. Okay. Maybe you're doing. We put our pumpkins. We put our pumpkins. Where did we put our pumpkins? On a stick. Oh, I like that. I'm going to write some of that, but let's see. On a, what kind of stick? Wooden, that's right. Let's do it. What do you hear? W walks away. Oh, this is a motion you don't know yet. This is oh. What is it? We're going to talk about this tomorrow. This is it. The short O, like in book. This is the long O, like in moon. And the difference is, if you look, he's got his hands up and he's got his mouth. The because the story is ooh was out flying, ooh, and got scared, okay? So that's one of those other vowels. So So I would write it and I would draw it. His mouth and his hands up. Would, what do you hear? First, daddy's face. Oops, sorry. First, daddy's face. Daddy is tall. Would daddy go to the monster? No, not daddy. He's not going to the monster. We put our pumpkins on a wooden. Oh, N. Now some kids will do this. If they write wooden, they just write the N, because when you say N, that's what they hear, the letter name. But I'm going to show you this. Every clap has a vowel, has a vowel, has a vowel. Every clap has a vowel from a window in the vowel house. You have to have a vowel in there. There's no vowel. So what are we going to put? Would, N. What do you hear? And you're going to go put it in. We put our pumpkins on a wooden, what? Stick, okay? And I might just write that then, depending on how long they've been sitting there. Okay, sorry. All right. So maybe then you say, okay, let's look at our word wooden. Which window in the vowel house does it belong to? Show me. Let's do it. Let's segment it. Ready? Say the word wooden. Do the first clap. Wood. What do you hear? Wood. Okay? Wood. N. Then you whisper the first clap after you've done it and say the second clap loud. Then. N. What do you hear? N. Every clap, say it with me, sing it with me. Every clap has a vowel, has a vowel, has a vowel. Every clap has a vowel from a window in the vowel house. Okay, and then there's an illustration. So, you know, this is what would be in kindergarten, this would be what would be in first grade. So you'd have the jack-o'-pumpkin, okay, and maybe you'd have the craft stick, okay? And then maybe the next day, so you've done the pumpkin on the craft stick, maybe the next day you turn it around and you work on the jack-o'-lantern part. Okay, so then you could say something about, oh, let's see here. What did we make today? What did we make today? A jack-o'-lantern. And how did we get it to be a jack-o'-lantern? What did we have to do? We made a face. That's great. We did make a face. You're right. What else did we have to do? Here was our pumpkin on a stick. What do we have to do to this pumpkin on the stick? We have to flip it, or what could we say? What else? Turn it, because in the poem it says turns into a jack-o'-lantern. So then, maybe the next day, what did we do? Well, what did we do first? What did we make? We made a jack-o'-lantern by, what were we doing? How did we make the jack-o'-lantern? By what?
Twisting.
Could say twist. Oh, I like that word, twisting. Could you think of a different word instead of twisting? Maybe you want to use twisting, but I'm going to tell you why I want to go for turning. So let's see here. So we made, sorry, that's a long A sound, sorry. We made, what? What did we make? Jack-o'-lantern, a jack-o'-lantern. And maybe I'm going to do here, let's say lantern. What do you hear? Lantern. What's the first clap? Lan, okay. And what do you hear? And, okay. Lantern. What do you hear? T. T is a teenager up on her tiptoes. What do you hear? E-R, I-R-U-R. E-R-I-R-U-R. So lantern. So let's read it. We made a jack-o'-lantern by what? You said twisting. Can you think of a different word that means the same as twisting?
Turning.
Turning. Okay, let's do that one. Turning. What do you hear? T. Oh, look. E-R-I-R-U-R. Turn. All right, turn. Ing. This is one we haven't done yet either. This is the ing chunk. Ing. It's like an elephant's nose. And when you mark it at the beginning for kindergarten and first grade, you literally draw the elephant's trunk. So they see it turning. They see that chunk. So let's read. We made a jack-o'-lantern by turning. What did we turn?
The pumpkin.
We did turn the pumpkin, but what were we holding? A stick. So maybe I want to use a stick. So by turning the stick. Sometimes you just are writing. You're not telling them what you're doing. You're doing the K and P, and then I write the T. Okay? And then on this day, I would have my illustration, and I would have a jack-o'-lantern. Okay, on the stick. Now, my focus maybe this day was the ER versus the UR in the sound. Maybe I wanted to start to point that out to kids, that it could be either way. It's still the same sound, it's just a different way to spell it. Okay? It could be that I'm going to concentrate on the short A sound in jack and lan. Okay? Maybe I want to introduce I know what my focus is, because I've watched them writing and I'm looking at their writing samples to see what they need work on, where I need to go. But it's coming from an activity that we did together. It's always something that's of value, that's something that everybody did. It's not specific. The only time that it isn't if it's somebody's birthday. And when Terry does birthdays, she does, it is Michael's birthday, let's say. So she would do, and whose birthday is it? Michael's, and so she would write, it is Michael's, and of course the kids, she might do Michael's, the beginning sound. Birthday. And when she introduces the IR, this is the candle on the birthday cake. Birthday. And then when she let's say he's 6, she'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's always the same. For every kid in the class, it's always the same. And then they get to choose what color to color the birth candles on the cake. There's 6 candles, and they illustrate. That's the only day the kids are allowed to illustrate. It's when it's their birthday. But she does the IR in birthday. Very early, the kids learn that it's the candle. The I is the candle on the birthday cake. So they know that on birthday, for the word birthday, it's IR. And they never make that mistake then after it's, third kid's birthday in the year. They know that. Okay, questions? Go ahead.
I think you kind of answered it, but the phonetic spelling, it seems like words that the kids could phonetically spell, but it would be incorrect spelling. It seems like you did that for them. Like you didn't lead them into a situation.
Correct.
To spell it
Right,
phonetically.
right.
So you just kind of take over those
we talk about the fact that that's a word wall word.
Yeah.
So if I want to, it doesn't fit the rules, and it becomes those sight words. You know, at the beginning of kindergarten and first grade, a lot of the words that they are developing as sight words are really phonetically correct. It and is, and they really are phonetically correct. But you're trying to just build that comfort level with vocabulary. But by the middle of first grade, you know, like one year I had a group of kindergartners, and they for some reason loved the word drew. You know, I drew. And they would be writing in their journal, D-R-O-O, which I was thrilled with, because that's telling me they're hearing those sounds. I can fix the spelling, but if they're not perceiving the sound, then I've got a bigger problem. So once you have a student who's writing sure, and they write and they're reading it as sure, because that's what they're writing in terms of developmental, their early spelling, that invented spelling, or they have all different names for it. I can go back and show that kid that for this word, that's not how we write it. For you, this is a word wall word. This would go in his bank of words in the back of his, especially if it's one he wrote a lot. It would go in the back of his reading notebook, and I would teach him that this doesn't fit the rules. This is how we write it. You heard the sounds, that's right. That's exactly, isn't it crazy what English does? This is what you hear, and this is how we write it. This is a word wall word. It does not fit rules. And I would give it to him then to put on his word bank or whatever, if it was one he wrote a lot. Well, the little kid that I had, I had a boy in my class that year named Drew, and his name was on the word wall. And they wrote D-R-O-O, and finally, after about a month, I about had it. And I said, look, find Drew's name on the word wall. And everybody looked, and they found it. They knew where it was, because there was a picture of the kid next to the word. And I said, that's how you write Drew. You heard the sounds. That's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. You heard all the sounds. But when we write that, that's how we write it. And for first graders, that EW is another way to spell the oo sound, like in knew and flew. So when you're working with the vowel house with first grade, you're going to spend some time on that. It wasn't appropriate for kindergarten. So I just showed him. I said, look, his name's up there. Copy his name when you write I drew, I drew, I drew. You know,
So
I
the vowel
fixed it.
houses are different for kindergarten, first grade, second grade?
Kindergarten does not do the vowel house, because the vowel house is too analytical. You don't want kids wanting to only write words they can spell. You want kids taking risks and writing what they hear. I will say that I've had a couple kindergartners I used the vowel house with, but those kids were reading at second or third grade level. They needed it, because their writing, there wasn't a reading-writing match. We have a lot of kids, and I'm sure you do too, who had move, move, move in reading. And their writing is so different than what they're actually reading. And Fontes and Pinnell will say there should be a pretty close match. If they're reading this, they should be writing close to that. Not necessarily exactly, but there should be a pretty close match. And we've got a lot of kids that have a reading-writing gap. And so with those kids that were really good readers, I did reading with them, but I focused on narrowing that gap in terms of their writing. So I did do the vowel house with a few, but not in my whole career, maybe 5. The other kids they're not ready to worry about how to spell a different oo sound if they're not actually writing D-R-O-O. Because they're not perceiving the sound yet. They haven't made the primary match in terms of the sound system. Until they have the primary match, you don't introduce other confusions. You have to make sure that there's a match between that phonetic piece and the sounds that they're writing. Then you can worry about the spelling. But my kids in kindergarten were not allowed to say, how do you spell? My response was always what you hear. Write what you hear. Because I can fix the spelling, but I can't fix the spelling if their match is not correct. Because the match is they're not operating from the phonemic piece. So if they're trying to write Drew and they only know how to spell it, and they write D-R-O, well, and I show them the O and I say, what sound does that make? And they say, ah. Well, they're not writing what they're hearing. They're trying to write what they think it looks like. But you cannot, and when we spend time on Thursday on the Vowel House, these phonemic pieces have to be firmly in place in terms of the primary spellings before you introduce any secondary spellings. Because if they're not operating from that phonemic piece, they're going to the wrong place. So when you're working with a first grader and he's trying to write plane like the landform plane, and he doesn't even know to go to the A window, he doesn't have a legitimate guess to figure out a strategy to figure out what the other spellings could be, because he's not operating from the phonemic piece. There has to be a match. You have to make sure that and that's why it's so important for teachers to be looking at kids' writing samples and talking to them about what they're writing. Because in that conversation, you're able to figure out whether the problem is that the incorrect match has been made, they're writing the wrong letter for that sound, or whether the sound is correct and they're ready to move on to other kinds of spellings. But you don't know that if you don't have the conversation with them, because they have to be able to tell you what it was that they wrote. Those are conversations we need to be having with kids more often. Just looking at their journals where they're free writing, not copying something, but they're actually writing on their own. And you're looking at what they're doing. And then you talk to them. What's this? You can pretty much tell, but you need to verify before you introduce an alternate spelling to make sure that they're perceiving that sound correctly and the match is right. Okay, questions? All right, in the literacy routines, we'll do some more calendar entries in a minute. But if you look at the literacy routines, let me see where to go back to. I don't want to go there. Let me go back to, I don't want to go. All right. If you go into the literacy routines for teachers, I have access to all the different grades levels. So I'm going to open first grade, and I'll open October. And you go down to the language calendar. Okay? There are there's some information on something there are suggestions on what teachers should be doing on a daily basis and throughout the month. So every day when you do a language calendar entry, you want to be clapping a multisyllabic word and a one-syllable word. Because what happens with readers and writers, readers when they hit second and third grade and they get into multisyllabic words, they don't know how to take a word apart. And when they're trying to write a multisyllabic word, they don't know how to take it apart. And so they write something much simpler. So instead of being able to broaden their writing, they write big because they don't know how to write gigantic, or they don't know how to write enormous, even though that's really what they want it to say. And so that they need to be on a daily basis clapping at least a one-syllable word, clap a short word and a long word. And a long word is any word more than 2 syllables. Okay? Stretch out a word, so you're going to segment a word. So if I had the word made, I might segment made. Okay, let's segment the word made. Aid. Ready? Aid. Let's blend it. Made. Aid. So you blend it down your arm too. Pick one of those, one word from your entry to segment or blend. And then you might go back and box sight words. So like the word put might be one. Early in first grade, mine would be hour. I would go back and box it. If I looked at my language calendar, I brought one of my old language calendars from my classroom. This was from March of kindergarten. But here was one. We played with the farm animals, and then we did a list: horse, cow, pig, and sheep. These were the sight words we'd already worked on. We highlighted. I did the ED, because they knew finished. And we did a multisyllabic word, and this is the EE sound. So later on, we used clocks to tell time, and I put a clock stamp on there. So it came from something we did in math. It doesn't have to be from something you did in language arts. It could be something you talked about in science. It could be talked about, we looked at some clocks, we can write the time. And we wrote the time, we put the time, and then we had a time stamp and stuff. It came with something that we had done for math. We put pom-poms on the butterfly for the number 6. It just flowed from, look, this one I obviously was doing the We cooked green eggs and ham. They were good. I was obviously doing But this was every year I did the leprechaun came, and destroyed my classroom while they went to lunch and spread gold on the floor and glitter. So he left a message on the smart board for them. Hi, boys and girls. Did you see my pot of gold? I left you some necklaces. Please share them with Miss Perseni's boys and girls. Your leprechaun. And so the next day, I think they wrote back. They didn't on here, but they made me write them back. We didn't take your pot of gold. It was by the window or something. I don't know where we had put it, but when you think about your content standards, if you look then, here are some entries down below. Here's some sample entries. Listed are all of these activities that you can do with them. And there actually are links. I'll show you in a minute one. And then this is...
Cap focus name on there, cap focus.
Right, well, yeah, no, this is your concepts about print. So all of your standards are here that you're covering. So in this entry, it was blank's birthday, blank is 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Celebrate birthdays on the language calendar, draw a table with the cake on it and the birthday child, write happy birthday, label with a name, draw a picture of the child whose birthday it is and label, make a card for the birthday boy or girl, and then you're doing H and B and D. You're pointing out differences between numbers and letters. You're counting the number of words in the sentence, excitement mark, clapping and segmenting and blending 6. Segment 6, beginning sound at the shoulder and ending with it. But this is where you're pulling all those standards that you're pulling from the content standards. You're modeling it for them. So if you have kids who need to write a 3-sentence paragraph, or a paragraph title, what do you call it? My mind just went blank. I'm sorry? A topic sentence and 2 details or 3 details. If you're expecting them to do that in March at their assessment, you better start modeling that in January or February. How do you do that? You write a topic sentence one day, and the next day maybe you write a detail, and the next day you write a detail, and on the next day you put it together into a paragraph. That needs to be modeled for kids multiple times. I always planned my language calendar looking at what my assessments were going to be in November. And if I knew that they were going to be assessed on these phonic sounds or these sight words or these pieces and parts, I made sure I taught them on the language calendar that whole grading period before I got there. So they'd had familiarity with it. And I've modeled it for them. So that's that. And then when you open these, if you look, for example, here, this is, we read Stella Luna. She tried to act like a bird, but it was hard. When you click on anything that's blue over here, this is read Stella Luna or watch the read aloud, you click that, it'll take you right to YouTube to the book. The teachers don't even have to find the book at the library. There's a link for them to take them to YouTube with somebody reading the story with the pictures and everything on there, or a video of it with captions or whatever. So it's all there for teachers. They don't have to go search down the book and those pieces and parts. But the language calendar, I will tell you this, at the beginning of the year the kids hate it because they really have to focus. But it takes, I will say, a kindergarten at the beginning of the year, we maybe spent 6 minutes on it a day. We were writing one sentence. By this time in March, we might be spending 10 to 12 minutes on it, depending on what the language was that was coming in terms of it, but it never was longer than about 15 minutes. You don't want to spend, I mean, with second grade, maybe if you were working on figurative language, or you can teach all of those things through the language calendar entries. Like if you're working on similes with first grade or second grade, model that on the language calendar. You know, we heard the fire bell go off. It sounded like, you know, a roar or something, you know, whatever. So that they start to learn that the piece and part that really what you're doing is pre-teaching some of the things that you need to have them learn. You're modeling it for them. It's almost always written in the past tense. Why do you think that would be important?
Focus on endings.
That's one reason, because of the endings you can teach, right? What else?
You've already done it.
Right, it comes from something that you'd already done. That's another reason. Go ahead. Anybody else? Another reason? Think about some of, go ahead.
The model past tense language.
Right, the model of past tense language. We have a lot of irregular past tenses. That's where you teach all those irregular verbs. Sweep and swept and bought. And, you know, we went we bought, Miss Marr bought smelly pencils for everybody in the class. I can teach bought. I mean, it's because those irregular past tenses of verbs are things that really mess kids up. You can teach all of those and model all of those through the language calendar. And yes, it comes from a shared experience. That's a critical piece. It's something that, so it should be written in the past tense. And in the KMPs, the only KMP that actually is a sign is the ED, which is this, and it means finished in sign language. And so when you're doing played and you're writing P-L-A-Y and you say, are we doing it now or are we all done? And they say we're done, and you say it's finished, and then you write the ED. My kindergartners knew ED on the end of some of the verbs because they saw it all the time. But that's a critical piece, is that ED ending versus the irregular past tenses of verbs, especially because a lot of kids don't use the irregular past tenses of verbs very well. They say, you know, bide. I bide it at the store. And so that's what you're modeling, is getting that language in there. Again, if you go back to the science of reading, that's that language piece. I will say that some of the interesting things in this one podcast I was listening to about language and stuff was that where a lot of kids break down in their comprehension, especially even then they're more advanced readers, is on those conjunctions, those words that are connecting two phrases. They can decode them and they can read them, but they don't really understand what they mean. Like everybody came to school but so-and-so versus everybody came to school except, or a lot of them can read those words, but they don't mean that person wasn't there. Their language constructs are not secure for a lot of the kids when they get into complex language structures. So that's something to check. There used to be a test when I taught the hearing impaired called the test of syntactic abilities, and it was some people called it a reading test. I called it a language test because I had a student who came to do her practicum from Kent State, and she wanted to use it as a reading diagnostic, and I said it wasn't a reading test, it's a language test. But you have to read the sentences. But they gave you a sentence, a student a sentence, and then they gave them 4 choices that were the same sentence kind of rewritten, and they had to choose which one actually meant the same thing. And it was all those conjunctions in between phrases that they broke down. They didn't know except or without, or, you know, those pieces and parts. Questions? We're going to spend not time today, but when we come back in October, on the language calendar planning and the routines in the language calendar, because they developed something specific for Mentor, and somebody from another district who helped to write it is going to come with me that day and go through the literacy routine, the language calendar routines for everybody, so that how Mentor is thinking about it in terms of planning it. And I planned my language calendar over the course of a week. And when I did mine, I didn't have any planning time in the afternoon, so I knew what my entry was going to be at lunch because I wrote it and ran it off at lunch. So come hell or high water, that was the entry that was going up on the board because I couldn't leave the room to go to run off another one. And so it was, I had it all planned out for the week in terms of what I was thinking, where my phonic focus was, and what my sight words were that I was going to be developing, and what concepts I might be developing, and where I was going to pull it from. Like this was going to be an entry for math because I knew what my math plan was, or, you know, and for elementary teachers who are teaching all of the subjects, if they're teaching all the before, you know, up till 2nd grade, I don't know, you don't departmentalize in 2nd grade, do you? Good.
When you say run it off, what do you mean? Like, after you make a copy of it to give to the kids then?
Yeah. My kids had what we called a homeschool notebook. And my kids, I got ran off every day, put in their notebook. They started on day 1 and then they just added it the whole year. So by the end of the day, they had a 3-ring binder. And then the parents actually wrote news on the back. My kindergartners and the preschoolers did the same. So that you had a point of conversation with these kids who didn't have. They could try to tell you about something that had happened at home and you didn't know what they were talking about because their speech wasn't good enough, or, you know, so the parents had already written it. You know, I ate Trix for breakfast. And there might be some parents that blew the front of the box of the Trix box in the back of on the calendar. But it came back to school, so I could say, oh my gosh, what did you eat for breakfast? So we had a conversation point and we could work on things. So, but this was for kids of limited language at the time. So it was a way for me to pull language, and it was a way for parents to actually know that we did something at school. I know teachers who run it off and put it as the kids' bell work for the next day, or like the next week. You do the 5 days of the week before, and they have to go back and highlight the sight words on it, and they have to, you know, mark a 2-syllable word and a 1-syllable word, and they have to they can illustrate it on their own then, if it's part of their bell work package. I've known some 1st grade teachers who've done it that way, but, you know, you do what works for you.
So one of the questions that one of the teachers always asks during PLC are the order of which sight words to teach. You know, do you use the Fry list, or is there a specific order that Phonics in Motion uses for sight words?
No. And I'll tell you why. Because at the beginning, well, first of all, in my opinion, sight words need to be developed in connected language, not on flashcards. Because they can read them on flashcards, but they don't read them in connected text. So I pull them from what I'm doing with the language calendar. We had a list of words in my district that the kids were supposed to know by the end of kindergarten. And I just kind of prioritized the ones that I thought were more critical and made sure I worked with them on the calendar. But there's no point. You can watch kids read these word on the calendar, on their flashcards. And if you shuffle them, they don't read them again because they're out of the order that they're used to reading them in. And then they go to read them in connected text and they really don't see them in connected text. It's like, how can you read it here, but you can't read it here? Well, it's because he's never encountered it with language around it. And that's the critical piece about those sight words. So we had a list of words they were supposed to know by the end of kindergarten and lists they were supposed to know by the end of first grade. They had some that were, 20. First of all, I think, and this is my own opinion, I think we're asking them to learn too many sight words too fast. Because the purpose of learning sight words is to learn how to learn a word. It's like, how do I figure out this word? And so, I don't know where the magic number got to be 100 words by the end of kindergarten or 75, and these are the 25 each grading period. There's no, I don't know. And that's just me. My kids were all reading and writing by the end of kindergarten, most of them at a D or an E level. They were good readers. But I spent a lot of time at the beginning making sure they saw language embedded in authentic language. That's what my kids needed. Didn't do them any good to, it was just my own, it's just me.
They tend to use it then for RTI, and they use it like, well, if I do this intervention for this many weeks, I want to see them increase this amount of sight words, and so they feel the pressure to have to teach so many sight words.
Yeah, to me, in terms of that, the important reason we want kids to learn sight words is they don't spend time trying to figure them out when they're reading connected text, and we want them to be able to write them. And so we want them to be able to, when they're writing and they come and they're trying to write something, you don't want them to invest the time on a word like hour. You want them to be able to write hour and go on so that they can think their thought. Because the purpose of writing is to communicate thought. It's not you don't want to narrow it down to the point. So you're trying to get fluency in terms of those aspects of it. So I never taught them separate from writing. They were always being developed simultaneously. If they were reading them, I wanted them to be able to write them. We were developing them together, the reading and writing portion. So if I was doing come, and Terry has a bunch of things, but Pat Cunningham and her work talks about, when you're introducing a sight word, let's say the words come, you say the word come, okay? C-O-M-E, 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 C-O-M-E. And Terry did C-O-M-E, come to mama. And then they then learned to write it. They weren't just learning to read it, they were learning to write it at the same time. And Pat Cunningham says 5 words a week up until tax day. And after April 15th, you're working on reviewing and making sure they're secure. But the goal is to integrate the reading and writing. So if I were doing, I would maybe narrow the number of sight words they had to read, but I would want to see a comparable list that they were actually writing them. Like Terry on her spelling, and when I had first grade, I didn't do it in kindergarten, but when I had first grade, I always had 2 sight words that they had to write as part of their spelling test every week. So I was building them, and then maybe as January came on, they might have had 3 that were added that didn't fit the spelling pattern that we were developing with vowels, but were actual sight words, and we were working on developing those. But they'd been modeled on the language calendar numerous times before.
So because you're planning ahead of time and you know,
Right.
you're trying to use the words
Right.
that you're exposed to over and over.
Absolutely. You're trying to mesh, You don't want it segmented out. You want kids to see the relationship between the language and the words and the phonics and all of those pieces. You want them to integrate it. It's not in this setting I do this and in this setting I do this. You want to pull it together, and that's what the language calendar does. It's the glue. It pulls it together for them. It's modeled every day. You're showing them it's not the craft of writing, like how do I write an opinion piece. It's how do I get this sentence that I want to write down onto the paper? How do I stretch out the words, and how do I make sure that there's a match in my consonants with this letter, and how do I make sure that it's telling exactly what it is that I wanted it to tell? And it's definitely the glue that holds it together. And if you look here, let me show you here. Let me go to this. If I go down to the language calendar here, let me go back to present. So it's the glue. It's modeled for all grades, 5 to 15 minutes. It's based on a summary of a shared experience, written in the past tense, often academic, can be what's going in science. You know, it might be in second grade, you're talking about pumpkins, and pumpkins grow on a vine, and pumpkins can change or turn from green to yellow to orange, and you know, pumpkins can be carved, and you might be working on the AR, or you might be working on V with an E at the end. Okay, the illustration always matches the text, and it's precursor to imagery, to visualizing, to that reading strategy. You're showing them how to visualize this information by adding that picture that attaches to that language. And at the end of the month, we collated it. And I know Terry had when Terry was in Mentor before, she had some teachers who, they were 3rd or 4th grade, 5th grade, I don't know what they were, older, in the building, one of the buildings. And they worked on different things, different days of the week.
They were us.
They were you? I loved your calendar stuff. It was terrific. It was terrific. And that is some of what I think is when you look at when we go and spend time on the language calendar in the 6th of October. That's kind of what you're going to see for Mentor. It's specific for Mentor. So, okay. It's an opportunity for kids to see language written by an adult model, a real-time entry. You develop your concepts about print, your foundational skills. It's risk-free. The kid is making no risk on this. The teacher is writing correct language, correct spelling, correct everything. The kids are participating because they're telling you, like, you know, pumpkin, what do you hear? If Johnny says F and everybody else says P, well, that tells me that Johnny needs some work on that sound, but he's not making a mistake. Nobody's pointing it out to him. You're writing the P. You don't say, oh, Johnny, that's wrong. You know, it's you're incorporating your standards. And can I say that the listening and the speaking and listening standards are ones that we tend to forget about a lot, but they are really easily adapted in terms of the language calendar. You're collaborating, they collaborate with peers then. They can use it when they go. Let me go down here. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I gotta go back. Let's see if you'll go back. No, you won't go back. I want out of here. Oh, let me escape. Sorry, wait a minute. I'm going to go back. Present. You can work with your social studies and science standards. It's one that if a child in your class then wants to write the word hour and he doesn't remember how to write it and he's trying to do something, or he's trying to write pumpkin or jack-o'-lantern, and they know it's up on the calendar, they can go over there and find it. It's a reference for them. It's a resource. And it's a resource they're familiar with because you built it with them. It's not one that's just hanging in the room when they come in. It was from something that they actually participated in, so they've got success. And it also builds oral language skills. Like we had a teacher one year when we were working at Lake Erie who they had to teach. They were a 3rd grade group, and they were teaching sound words, like slam, and they spent a whole week with that kind of an entry. Slam, the door, we heard the door shut behind, it scared us when we heard the door shut, So they saw a teacher drop something on the floor, and they used that, the sound words, so that the kids got that in there. If they were working on similes, they spent a whole week where they were working on, he was this big, he liked it, it sounded like, a bomb going off, or it sounded like this, and the next day they did something where it tasted like we ate blah, 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 it tasted like this. And so they were doing those similes words, because in 2 weeks they were going to have to write sentences with similes, but they'd seen somebody do it. Again, here's daily and throughout the month. I will say that at the beginning it has, drawing a line for every word. That's really related to pre-K and kindergarten. And by I'd say the middle of October or even 1st of October, I didn't do that with my kindergartners even. They had an idea. But it's building the concept of word so that they could go up there and frame it. I could say, go frame a word, and they'd go up to the calendar and frame it, or go up to the poem and frame it, that concept of what a word is. And if you look, like this is one. We had a fire drill. We were very quiet. They were working on the Q. That's a hard sound. Not often does it come up in our language. And then here's the activities that you would do. There's always some kind of journaling support in the language calendar ideas. But if every month on the literacy routines, there's at least one read aloud that goes with whatever the themes are for that month, and the links to it, and calendar entries to go with it then, with follow-up activities. A minimum of one read aloud the teachers can do with kids. But this is where you're working on, inauthentic things, not like just go through and add a period at the end of every sentence. You're modeling that every day. What do I put when I'm finished? Oh, I put a period. Or I asked a question. What do I need? I need a question mark. Oh. And sometimes I might do a whole week where I started with a question. And then the response was the rest of the entry. This shows one progressively. We painted purple paw prints. Of course, they're just focusing on the P. Okay. Mariah was 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We sang happy birthday and 8 cupcakes. Looking at that entry, what are they working on? Long A. They did it with 8 and cupcakes. All right. Little Bird and Bear played hide and seek in Moon Game by Frank Ash. Our class went outside to play hide and seek. It was so much fun. What are they working on there? The EE spelling. They had seek, right? And that long I and outside and hide. They've marked that. And they're doing a summary. Okay? But all of that is delineated for teachers so that, and this is of course the calendar. And this is like how you would plan it. So here's my entry. These are my KMPs I'm developing. This might be the handwriting story I'm focusing on. And then this might be the vowel house that I'm working on. Contrasting long I versus short I. The quiet versus and fire versus drill. Think about that in terms of if you're looking at what you need to get done, how you've supported those other pieces and parts in an authentic way. There is a page, and this is where I'm going to spend time on this on Thursday. I'm going to talk to you about this. There's different ways that we mark on the language calendar, different things, and I'm going to spend some time with that on Thursday. There's actually a support for you at the website for you, but rather than do it today, we'll start with that on Thursday. Now, when you come back on Thursday, we're going to spend most of our time on the vowel house. I'm going to introduce how do you introduce it, how do you work on a window, how do you sequentially build the window development so that you're building those alternate spellings in authentic ways. And I'm going to bring some of the worksheets, their vowel house worksheets, that I can show you how to support that word work. The vowel house is the only thing that is kind of a separate, it's a separate time block. It's your word work time when you're working on words. And as compared to the language calendar and the poetry, I mean, you can pull words out of the poems to take to the vowel house, but when you're doing that focus, you're spending it as part of your word work time of your day. And it's about 10 to 15 minutes. You're not spending 2 hours. Okay? Any other questions for today? If you think of any between now and Thursday, just bring them on Thursday, and now we can start with questions at the beginning of things that occurred to you, like questions you might have. And I'll try to answer them. But I hope today that I showed you that it's just part of the routine. Like if you're doing the poetry, you're doing the KMPs, you're taking 2 words and putting it in the vowel house. You're demonstrating at the beginning of August and September how to do the My Words paper, and that becomes part of the kids' routine. That's what they're doing when you're pulling guided reading groups, or you're pulling word work groups, or whatever. You've set those routines in place, and they don't take a lot of time. It does take more time now because you're teaching them the routine. But once the routine is done, Terry had a work board. My kids had she had a work board, and every day, if she was developing, wanted them on Tuesday she had the fun poetry paper, and it went up on the work board that they knew it was going to be due on Friday, a copy of it. And then she had the My Words paper, and when she told them they were going to do that, it went up on the work board, and it just kind of got built as the week went on. So the kids knew by Friday these were the things that needed to be completed. And if they weren't done, she always had a special 15-minute free choice, use any materials in the room, and they didn't get to do it because they hadn't finished the work that needed to be turned in. So they learned very quickly what to scan. It was up there for them, and they got it done. I had I don't have a copy of it. I took a 12 by 18 sheet of paper, and I had the 9 squares, kind of like the My Words paper. And I had certain things that were on there every week. Write in your journal, and then I'd had use the magnetic letter tub was one, and then there was one that was the computer, and there was one that was read with a friend, or read your books from your guided reading box. And then there was a 5th one. And then underneath it I had numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and I did a 2-week at a time. So I might have 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that they had to have 7 times that they wrote in their journal. There were certain things that they had to do a lot of. The sight word one, they might have over the course of the 2 weeks 3 times when they went to the magnetic letter tub. And the only thing that changed were the sight words I put in the tub. So if we were building these 5 sight words, those were the 5 cards that were in that tub. And once they built them on the cookie sheet with the magnetic letters, they circled 1, they'd done it 1 time. And maybe they had to write it. They had to write it on a sheet of paper. And then, another day they went and they did it, and then they could go to some other things that they chose in the room. But that worked for me. I didn't want to have to do something every week. I did something every 2 weeks. But 5 of the things were the same every week anyway. So the only thing might change, like when I had kindergarten, There might be like a little art craft, you know, peel and stick stickers that they could make a Halloween scene, you know, that they loved. And then they had to write about it in their journal or something. But that worked for me. But in Terry's room, she had a work board. And that worked for her, so. Okay? Any other questions? It's 3:20, we can go, can't we?
Yeah, you don't have to keep this true.
Okay, all right. Come back with questions or concerns or whatever after you think about it, but you know, I'll be happy to answer anything, but, and if you think of something that I don't have the answer to or I don't have the material to support you, I will get it for you, and I'll be happy to do that by the time I come back October 6th. So if there's something that comes up, just jot it on a note that's something you'd like, and I will try to, you know, get it. If there's information that you want or something, I'll be happy to look for it. So I'm here to help you. Okay? All right. Thank you. Good.